start.
All right.
Hi, my friends. I am so glad you're here listening today. Today, I have Erin Clifford, and um, I can't wait to get into her journey because on this podcast, I really like to show how we transform through self development and just growing older and knowing better and learning ourselves better. So, welcome, Erin. I think your journey is right up our alley.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Oh. So I was looking through all the information about you, and I saw you started as a teacher. You went into counseling, and now you are a wellness consultant. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what brought you to where you are right now?
Sure. I kind of have a journey that took a lot of twists and turns, but when I graduated from college, I started teaching high school. I taught English in the
Oh,
Chicago public schools, and it was really rewarding. And I always knew I kind of wanted to go on to school, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. So I ended up applying for a counseling program and also a program for law because my family are all lawyers,
oh,
and I wasn't sure which direction to go. So everyone sort of talked me into going to law school. So I ended up going to law school. But the second I got out of law school, I started practicing the profession. But there was still something nagging me about, mental health and wanting to help people. So I actually went back and got certified as a health and wellness coach. And I started working with a lot of busy professionals and lawyers. And it really did inspire me to finally go back and get that master's in mental health counseling. And so, now I use my teaching skills, my, coaching, my counselor skills to really, work with individuals and companies around creating, their own wellness programs. And, as much as I feel like that, deviation of going to law school, it really did teach me a lot about myself. And it really helps me work with professionals because I know what it's like to be really busy, not having a 9 to 5 job. And so I'm able to tap into that as well when I'm working with people.
oh yeah, I love that. So we were just talking before this, and so I am a high school English teacher as well. So and definitely that lends itself to everything that you were just talking about. And it's important for people to realize too that like you can take, side roads and that's okay. It's what you take from those side roads. I'm always telling my teenage girls, you can make mistakes, a lot of mistakes, just learn something from those. So it's just, what you take from your journey that matters.
It is. It's what you take from your journey. And sometimes, like, you end up in a spot where you're like, if I didn't go down these other roads, even if it didn't work out the way I thought, I wouldn't end up where I'm at. And that's what's important.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So I would like to talk about your book because you have a book. She's an author, Wellness Reimagined, and I feel like everything that is in your book is totally aligned with our podcast. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I wrote my book, Wellness Reimagine, a holistic approach to health, happiness, and harmony. And I wrote this because when I've gotten frustrated over the years with the wellness industry, because I feel like everything out there is very prescribed, but when I work with people, and I'm sure you know from teaching students, right, everybody's unique. And so I really wanted to bring something to everyone where you could create, as I like to say, your own wellness adventure and really think about it from a holistic standpoint, because it's a lot of times we think about wellness as being physical, but it's not
Mhm.
just physical, it's mental, it's emotional, it's spiritual. And so, how can you create a wellness plan for yourself that works with your life, that works with the life of your family? And that's really something that I wanted to help people create and really reimagine.
Yeah, I know for myself, every season I go through, I have to reimagine, like your book says, what that looks like for me.
Mhm.
So it's useful to have like almost a framework where you can work off of that.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's what I was really trying to create, and really starting with the values at the beginning, right? Because if we don't know what our priorities are at this point in our life, it's really hard to create a life that works for us.
yeah. And in there, you talk about self care. And I feel like self care has a lot of meetings in social media right now. And some of them are kind of condescending, some of them are really fluffy, and some of them are true to my core. What does self care mean to you?
So self-care to me really means, of course, like, creating consistent lifestyle initiatives into your routines, right? Like the traditional, like, physical fitness, nutrition, mindfulness, good sleep hygiene. But self-care also just means, doing the things that you love, that you enjoy, making sure you give yourself breaks and rests when you need it. And self-care looks different to everybody. I always think of self-care like that oxygen mask rule. When you go on the airplane, the flight attendant tells you to put your oxygen mask on first before you assist others. So you really need to think about it in the sense of what is going to give you oxygen and what can you do consistently. And I always tell people when I work with them, something's better than nothing. If you
Yeah,
don't have time for, a long workout, if you're really craving that burger, well, maybe have a salad instead of fries, right? Like finding just different ways to have little wins throughout the day and making time for yourself is really what I think of as self-care.
I like that. I like that a lot. And well, the podcast is called Nurture Herself. So I am definitely like taking care of yourself so you
Yep.
can actually show up the way you want to
Yeah.
for other people. Definitely. In your book, you have, or you talk about in general about some SMART goals. Do you want to explain what those are? We were just laughing because as a teacher, I know all about SMART goals. That's kind of
Yeah.
good to us, but can you explain to us what those are?
Sure. So I really like the idea of SMART goals, like when I'm doing like, counseling and coaching with somebody, because it gives you, I like to think about it as an action plan to actually get something done, right? It's great if we have these goals for ourselves, but if we don't follow through on them, they're not going to happen. So, when I think of SMART goals, I'm really, I like to start with that specific. So, it's not just what do you exactly want to do, but also why do you want to do it?
Mhm.
I work with people sometimes that will come to me and say, hey, I got diagnosed with diabetes or I have a heart condition. My doctor says I have to get healthy. I don't know what to do. A lot of times that's not enough for them to make changes, right? We've got to really kind of peel that onion back, if you will, and figure out, is it because you have all these personal goals, professional goals, you've got family, kids, grandkids, right? What's your big why? So I always like to start with that. And then you want to make sure your goal is measurable. Like, how are you going to keep track of it? Are you going to use an app? Do you have like one of my clients I worked with when he was growing up? He had like a habit tracker on like the wall at his family's home, and he put star stickers up on it. So we did that, right? You can make
Mhm.
this fun. If it's a health thing, are you going to, get your blood work tested, right? So how are you going to measure it? And then how are you going to make sure that you follow through with it every day? So I always have people make it achievable by creating a real action plan. So, for instance, if somebody said, you know what, I really just want to get into my exercise routine, make it simple. I'm like, okay, what are 3 habits we've got to build in that's going to help you actually achieve that goal of exercising 3 times a week? Because you want to improve your health and be able to get up and down the floor with your grandkids, right? And so we come up with those habits. And then we also talk about hurdles. What gets in the way for you all the time of this? Because if we don't plan for that, when it shows up, we're like, it can get us off track, and we don't want to do that. And then I think about, is your goal relevant, right? Is this something you can realistically do in your life with the resources you have? And then you want to make sure it's time bound. So is this something you're going to check in on in 3 months, in 6 months, even a month for some people? And then you can kind of reevaluate how it's going if you want to add something else in. And you've got to celebrate. I always add this in. What are you going to do to celebrate? I'm working with a client now, and she just set a goal for the summer. And so I'm like, well, what are you going to do to celebrate? She's going to go get a pedicure, right? It doesn't have to be anything huge, but that's something on her calendar that's fun to look forward to.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I definitely love celebrating the wins. Big
Yeah.
or small, we need more of that in our life. And we need to teach even like our kids and other people how
Yeah,
to do that. Yeah. Um,
exactly.
you also talk a lot about boundaries, and I feel like that's something that's really important
Mhm.
when we're trying to find the time to take care of
For sure.
ourselves. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about boundaries?
Sure. So I think of boundaries this way: limits liberate you. And this
Mhm.
might seem counterintuitive to some people, but if you think about it, if I have rules and boundaries in place, then I could give myself freedom to actually live the life I want. How many times do we say yes to things or kind of end up in situations that we don't necessarily want to be in because we feel bad or we didn't know how to say no? So, one of like my key things I tell people is, when somebody asks you to do something or you get an opportunity, go with your gut. If your gut reaction is, ugh, I don't really know that I want to do this. Like, it just, maybe I do want to do it, but it just doesn't work with my schedule right now. You've got to honor that. And you don't have to respond immediately, right? We can give ourselves like a little bit of wiggle room to kind of really think about if this is something that works with our life, works with our values, because the truth is, if you right away are like, I don't really want to go to this event, and you're like, well, it's in 2 months. Maybe I'll want to go then. You're not going to want to go then either, right? It's going to eventually show up on that calendar. So I always tell people, kind of honor that, and a no now is not necessarily a no forever. Maybe it's not the right time and you can communicate that. But when we can have boundaries for ourselves, we started talking about self-care, right? If you've got like self-care items on your schedule that week, right? Making sure you prioritize them. Those are boundaries you set with yourself. So I think it's just important when we're, creating the lifestyle that we want to create and honoring the things that are important to us that we're able to make them happen by having those boundaries in place. And just like everything, it takes practice. Right.
Mhm.
It's some people have trouble setting boundaries. And if I used to be like that, which is why I have a very long boundaries chapter in my book, but it takes practice. And, I think that's what we have to honor and give ourselves a little grace with. Sometimes it's hard, right? Because we feel bad.
I know lots of times when I was starting to put up some boundaries, because I was the yes girl, like I said yes to everything. I would even use my husband for excuse. Oh, I have to go home and talk about it with my husband. Just because I knew that, like, just because I wanted to say yes, it didn't always fit into our schedule. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll use him as an excuse. I'll come home, I'll really process it and think about it, and then try to take that time to listen to my gut and be like, oh, I don't know why I would have said the yes to that. So
Yeah, and it was a great way, right, to just delay
yeah.
your some
Mhm.
time so you could really think about it.
Yep, yep, definitely. So, we can definitely dive into all of this in your book, which is amazing, and I'll put all the links below on how to get your book. How else can we work with you?
Yeah, so I also do individual coaching, and I go in and I do group coaching with different organizations or companies. I'll do wellness consulting. So people can get a hold of me. I have a website, erincliffordwellnesscoaching.com, and I have a intake form on there. You can also find me on as Erin Wellness on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Okay, great. And so you can actually go into corporations and work with like a group of people. Is that what you do?
Yeah, I often will go in and, one thing that's great in this, I feel like in this space we're in now, a lot of companies are bringing in wellness to their employees.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I do a lot is I'll go in and I'll do a talk on certain wellness topics. Sometimes I'll go in with some groups once a quarter and do a talk or a workshop. So, that's one of my favorite things to do. I love working as a teacher, former teacher. I love working with groups. So, that's just something I get a lot from. And I hope the people I present to get a lot out of too.
That's awesome. Great. Um, so because this is called Nurture Herself, I do ask everybody on here, how do you nurture yourself? How do you take care of yourself every day? Are there a couple of habits or non-negotiables or boundaries that you have in your life that you do every single day?
Yeah, I think one of my things is, first thing when I get up in the morning, I like to do something to set a positive mood.
Mhm.
Whether that's just, getting up and doing a little meditation. Certain days I get up and I exercise. And I really try not to just look at my phone.
Yeah.
When I first get up in the morning, because I find that when I look at it, I get like off track or I see something that upsets me. So I really make a point when I get up in the morning to not keep hitting that snooze button, just to get up and do something positive. Even if it's just, taking my golden retriever for a little walk outside, something like that. I really too, need to move in my life. That's the one thing I found. I always ask everyone kind of what's your jam? Like, what do you have to have? For me, I have to get some movement in, whether that's, my workouts, just taking a walk. When I travel for speaking, I always bring my exercise bands. Even if I don't do like a lot, if just getting like 15 minutes in really gets me going, and really connecting just with my friends and family, like that's just such like a must for me. I'm fortunate enough, I actually work out of my family's law firm, so I get to see my family members all the time, spending a lot of time with my husband, my dogs. Like I need my community with me. That's important to me.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Yeah, those are definitely things I try to incorporate into my life too, and having a community is so key.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap this up, Aaron, this has been a great conversation. Is there anything else we can do for you? Anything else you would like to share?
No, I would just, I think the one thing I'd like to leave people with is, just remember it's about, building those small changes over time. I love that, parable, the tortoise and the hare, where, the tortoise and the hare challenge each other to a race. And I think about it like this, the hare's faster, but he burns himself out because he goes so fast and he falls asleep on the side of the road. But that tortoise just keeps going along steady and slow. And to me, that's really about wellness, right? What can I do and initiate in my life that I can do consistently that's just going to really get me always moving forward?
I love that. Yeah. The small steps in life. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Erin. This has been a pleasure. And I definitely want everybody to go out there and follow you and grab your book because it is just an amazing book to really help you along. And thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, good. And to all of you out there listening, look below, go look at the links. And remember, I always say choose yourself. And I love you. And we will talk next week.